I'm really pleased to be able to confirm that within less than 24 hours of going wide release on my £2 raffle for a brand new PS5 plus free worldwide shipping, that the guaranteed prize for whoever wins is already nearly £500 cash, no matter what. So for those who maybe missed that or who are curious about entering but waiting for the prize pool to go up, well, of course you can click the link right below in the description and check that out. For those who perhaps didn't see it, a few months back on the channel I released a video which has done very well actually, about 80 vehicles which were discovered in the coding of Gran Turismo 7. And at that point, it was natural to speculate how realistic, how legit that list was, especially then when I think only a couple of them had very recently arrived at that time, one of which was the Escudo. But then again, you could say, well, maybe just somebody guessed the Escudo or was hopeful for it. But as more time goes past, more and more of the cars from that list are indeed arriving in the game, which for those who maybe are still skeptical, I think this is a good time as we draw close to the end of the year, as we move into 2023, to take stock of the 14 vehicles that have already arrived and are about to arrive in some cases in the December patch. So without any further ado, let's get straight into them. Now the first one that I'm going to touch on here from those 80 is actually coming up, at least if my prediction, and the prediction of many of you as well, from Kaz's latest silhouettes for the December patch is correct, and that is the ST205 Toyota Celica rally car. Now if this is true, and I mean, the silhouette sure as hell looks like it, then this will be the first one here that I'm touching on to arrive in the game. And of course we'll have to wait later in the week to see if that's true or not. The next one though, we don't need to wait for, because this is not the kind of car you would just randomly guess. The Ford Hot Rod. That's such a specific car to be on this list that you, as I said, just wouldn't guess that. And even another one of the things which I recall being in I believe a separate part of coding, I guess you could say it was a 15th vehicle on this list, was actually the Suzuki Vision GT car. So overall it's kind of more like 15 cars, even though I didn't feature the Suzuki in that particular video, but it did arrive and was predicted beforehand. So again, just adding more and more credence to this data mining list. The next one again has already arrived. Interestingly, not the older Silvia, which we had a couple of months back, but the more recent one, the slightly newer but still S14 shape Silvia K's Aero that was on the list, and of course we had that very recently added as well. The next one was again a couple of months back. It was a very obvious selection to add, but again not necessarily a hugely likely one to guess necessarily, the road-going version of the Cayman. Of course, we already had the Group 4 Cayman GT4, but we didn't have the road-going counterpart. Then that one was on the list, and we now have it in the game as well. The next one is going to be one that we confirm or deny this coming week, but based on the silhouettes, it sure looks like it, the Bugatti Chiron. It really does look like that is in the December patch, the bottom right vehicle. Much like with the Toyota, we will have to wait until the latter part of this week to see if this does arrive or not, but for now it certainly looks that way. The next one though, another car. This one was, I believe, already just about included in the game when I had released the full list video, and that is the Suzuki Escudo. But it was featured on the list, and of course we have that one in the game already. The next one is another potentially forthcoming edition. It is backed up by the list, and it certainly looks to be one of those very same silhouettes with the ST205 and the Chiron, the Alfa Romeo Giulia GTA. Now it looks to be a GTA M in the actual silhouette based on the rear wing, but either way, I could easily see them listing that as a GTA in the coding, because why would you really need to add the M anyway? It's not like the names are exactly the same as the real cars. So again, we'll have to wait for confirmation, but it sure as hell looks like that from that teaser. The next one though, again, we don't have to speculate about, and in fact, all of the rest that I'm about to talk about is confirmed, because every single one of these from now on is in the game. On that list was the BMW M2 competition. We of course just had that added to the game, hugely popular new addition. I did an episode in fact of Game vs Real, where I compared what the car is like in the game compared to the real M2 competition, which I reviewed in Beards and Cars, and it is a massively popular machine. Next up, one of the cars that I was of course really looking forward to for my love of the brand, the Maserati Mirac. That is of course already in the game as well, and was yet again a super super specific car in that data mining list. Not exactly the kind of thing that you would just make up. Why would you? A Maserati Mirac you'd think would be a pretty sure bet for being wrong if you were just going to pick a name out of a hat. Next up, the McLaren MP4-4, the full-on, real-world, Senna spec Grand Prix car. Again, such a specific choice. If it were just a guess, I don't think you would guess something like that. That one, of course, is in the game as well. Next up, again, similar kind of time period. In fact, if I recall correctly, I think this one arrived in the same update, as I recall, as the McLaren, the Pontiac GTO. So again, another awesome car. Next up, though, again, much more recent addition, the Sierra RS500 Cosworth. This was one of the biggest names on the data mined list in terms of building up people's hype. We now have it in the game, which is great. Next up, another incredible returning face, at least up there with the Escudo, not in terms of popularity, but in terms of being an OG car from the series to be brought back. Of course, I'm talking about the Silhouette Skyline, the full-on wide-body classic Skyline race car, which is awesome to see back. And last, but definitely not least, the very last vehicle I believe that I talked about in that video, the Porsche 918 Spider, which of course is one of the coolest new supercar or hypercar, depending on how you want to look at it, additions to Gran Turismo 7. An absolutely fantastic machine. And again, I recently featured the 918 in an episode of Special Projects where I turned it into the RSR version. Fantastic car. Absolutely fantastic car. As I said, some of these were so specific that they're just not the kind of cars that you would have made up. If you were going to try and guess a car that was never featured, that you think probably would be, I think the list would have been stuff like BMW M5, F10, or just these super generic, really obvious choices that aren't necessarily bad, but are just, very vague and very obvious. You wouldn't go for Maserati Miracs, any of these super obscure things or less obvious choices. And for those who are interested or curious, we have seen vehicles in addition to these that were not in the list also arrive. Two notable examples being the Maserati A6 GCS and, probably most notably for me, and it disappointed a lot of people, but it's a pretty badass car, the Volkswagen IDR, the electric Pikes Peak car. That was not on the list either. So it's not that we're only getting these cars on the list, but these are more of a baseline to look at in terms of what we can expect. So for those who haven't watched the list, well, based on how many of these are coming true, I would strongly suggest that you check out that video, because some of them are cars that you have probably asked for before. Ferrari 599, Lexus LFA, and a lot more, both new faces and returning faces. So check out that video if you haven't already. I think it's a good time to take stock of the ones which have already arrived. And at this point, I don't think there's really much question anymore that list, at the very least, is a strong backbone for what to expect moving forward in the game, with some additions around it here and there. Overall, though, I would love to hear if you have either a vehicle from the list that hasn't arrived, which you are the most excited for, or alternately, or maybe as well, out of the 15 or so that have already arrived, which one's been your favourite? Because, of course, the one that I didn't touch on as much was the Suzuki Vision GT, but also there's tons of other really good ones that have already arrived, like the Escudo, for example. So, in addition to that, if you are interested in winning that brand new PlayStation 5 plus free shipping worldwide for the price of a cup of coffee, then of course check out that link down below. And until next time, I'll see you then. But for now, as always, thanks for watching.